Oh, they even got a new robot voice. Cool.
Oh, nice.
All right. Hello, my fellow friends from IB Biology. Unfortunately, you weren't able to join us today, but Elisa and I are here to school you in conservation. So far, we have talked a little bit about the three components of biodiversity, and I'll just go back. Sorry, Elisa. But the three components of biodiversity are going to be ecosystem biodiversity. So that's the number of different kind of, not necessarily habitats, it's slightly bigger than habitats, but yeah, basically ecosystems in a particular area, latitude, region, continent. Then there's going to be species biodiversity, which is usually like what we think of when we think of biodiversity. It's just the number of different interbreeding populations present. And then we've got a tricky one, genetic biodiversity, and that's again within those species, how much variation is there in the gene pool? Are we seeing a lot of inbreeding? Are we seeing a lot of rare genetic diseases because a lot of re recessive genes are being expressed? That's kind of the third component. And then the last thing that Elisa and I just talked about was richness and evenness. So richness is going to be the number of different species in an area, and evenness is the representatives of each of those species. So big round of applause for Elisa. She just had to listen to all this twice. All right, they're clapping at home. You just can't hear them. All right. So just to conclude there, Lisa, sample A has a higher richness, right? They've got three species.
Mhm.
But we like sample P better because there's more evenness. There's fewer species, but there's more of each number. All right. And there's also a math equation that you can use to track this. It's called the Simpson's Diversity Index, and we're going to get into that a little bit later. That's the only, I think, math in ecology is
Oh,
this
nice.
diversity index. It's pretty easy. All right. So 8.4.2 then takes us into the major extinction level events that have happened in our geologic record. Um,
Mhm.
the geologic record is really hard to, I guess, pin down. We're not entirely sure how accurate it is because it's really hard for living things to become fossilized. Um, so it's a bit like trying to put together a 1,000 piece jigsaw puzzle with like 17 pieces. It's really hard to get a full picture of ancient or prehistoric life because we just don't have that many pieces of evidence to understand what was going on. But we think that there's been so far five major extinction events, and we are now in the presence, or we are now in the middle of the sixth. All right. And so this graph on the right side kind of talks a little bit about when those extinction events have happened. A lot of them are attributed to kind of like extra, I don't know how we'd say this, extraterrestrial events. So not like aliens or anything, but like maybe an asteroid hitting the Earth. um,
Mhm.
or a volcanic eruption. That's not necessarily extraterrestrial, but that's attributed to a major extinction event. There might be a comet in there. I'm not entirely certain, but all of
Mhm.
these big events have been a bit like hitting the reset switch on the planet. And so, with anthropogenic human or climate change or extinction, it's not necessarily saying that the Earth will be over, but it may present a very different reality for humans. Maybe we'll develop technology to be able to cope, or maybe we'll have to seek, residence somewhere else. The Earth will be fine. It'll go on and it'll adapt and it'll, get back on its feet. But it's going to present some significant issues for humans 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years from now.
Mhm.
So here we go. Five mass extinctions. The most recent was 66 million years ago, and that was an asteroid collision. That took out care of a lot of the dinosaurs, but mammals were able to hide out underground and eventually rise up and evolve. And then we think that a lot of the ones before that were due to volcanoes. All right. And so that kind of takes care, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but that kind of takes care
Yeah.
of this middle bit here. So let me know if there's any blanks here that you missed.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think I got it all.
Perfect. All right. And so now we get into some more details about what's happening currently. So like what is it exactly that humans are doing that are causing so many of these issues? And you probably can guess. I think there's a mnemonic device. I want to say it's like hippo or something. It might come up in here, but a lot of these things are things you're probably aware of. Um, and so the first one is over harvesting. It takes a lot of land to feed humanity. Um,
Hmm.
we're getting better at it, right? We're going vertical. We're getting more efficient. But nevertheless, with the agricultural revolution, we had to take out a lot of natural habitats to grow our staple crops, our rice, our wheats, our corn, and so that's going to leave a lot of animals without anywhere to where to thrive or live. So that's the first cause of anthropogenic species extinction is overharvesting. So I think in my mnemonic device that's H. And then there's habitat destruction. Again, that's very similar to overharvesting. But with um, habitat destruction, we're also maybe building cities in these areas. Um, and it's not just for agriculture.
Hmm.
Then we've got invasive species. These are a big one. I'm not sure what invasive species are problematic. Do you ever have to like worry about zebra mussels on your sailboats?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, okay. So a lot of
Or
like, boats around here, when you take them from lake to lake, you have to like before you dock, put them in the new lake. You have to like really go over your boat with a fine-tooth comb and make sure that there's no like little shellfish attached to the prop or the
oh, okay, yes, I know what you're talking about.
that ringing some
Mhm.
bells. Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
just trying to curb invasive species.
Right.
There's a billion examples of invasive species in the United States, in Australia, all over Europe. For example, in Europe, gray squirrels.
Hmm.
Gray squirrels super common in North America. I'm sure they're all over Massachusetts. They're definitely
Right.
all over the Midwest.
Hmm.
They're an invasive species, and so they were introduced to the UK, and they've outcompeted red squirrels. And so
Oh,
red
no way.
squirrels have been kind of driven into the coniferous parts of the UK, and then gray squirrels are totally like dominant. But that's another example. In Australia, there's rabbits. Rabbits are an invasive species.
Oh,
Um,
no way.
and so they built this huge fence down the middle of Australia to try to prevent the rabbits from going west. But the rabbits are smart and they just dug under the fence. So they lost millions of dollars doing that. And then we got pollution and then global climate change. So those are the big five.
Okay.
Do you get along pretty well with your sister?
Yeah, we do.
Oh, good. Is
I
she in
think,
school?
sorry?
Is she in college or is she out?
Yes, she's finishing her last year at Amsterdam University,
Okay.
studying microbiology, actually.
Oh, good for her. Well done.
Yeah,
World needs more microbiologists.
for sure.
And
Hmm.
is her boyfriend in microbiology as well?
No, he does computer science
Oh,
at
smarty.
University of Washington.
Wow, very smart. Very
Yeah,
smart.
intense. Okay, I'll get on this slide, I think.
Okay. And then the last thing that it provides for you is kind of just a couple of examples um, of animals that have become extinct due to people. You don't have to necessarily use these examples, but
Hmm.
on a longer response test or a longer response question, you might be asked to provide an example. And and,
Hmm.
and the dodo, there's tons of different examples, but these are the three that this particular presentation highlights. The first are these giant moas. The next are monk seals, and then the last is this really funky frog called the Mount Glorious torrent frog.
Okay.
And so again, if you want to take some time after we chat today and look up what exactly caused these three species to become extinct, you can. However, you can choose literally any animal, the Tasmanian tiger, the dodo, that's become extinct, and you can, as long as you have one or two examples, that might really be beneficial for you on an exam. Oh,
Okay.
yeah,
And
a
these are,
spoiler. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
are they're extinct due to human causes or
Yeah,
just
so
due
like these guys, the giant moas, sailors were looking for food, and these guys had never seen humans before, right?
Mhm.
And so they would just like walk up to sailors, and then the sailors would just straight up just kill them. Same with the dodos. It was just like
Oh
they were
my God.
so unaccustomed to seeing people that they were super
Yeah.
tame and totally fearless, and so that's good meat. So this was a lot of just like linked to a lot of sailing expeditions. Monk
Mhm.
seals, again, just like food, man. People sailing. Monk seals also, uh, I don't know if they provided any kind of oil, but they were pretty easy. And I don't know much about the torrent frog, what ultimately caused the torrent frog. But you're welcome to either look these up as examples or not at all, or you can do it right now, whatever makes you happy.
Okay. Thanks. That's interesting. I didn't.
Yeah, usually like if there's more kids, I'll have you guys go into breakout rooms, and have one kid choose one of these, but
Mhm.
it's not a big deal. All right. Let's see. And so that's animals. The next bit here gets into ecosystems. And so with ecosystem loss, you're taking out a lot more than one species at a time. And so there are some different causes of ecosystem loss. And the big one again is going to be agriculture. Agriculture seems to present the most problems for anthropogenic extinction because again, you take out an organism's land, there's no place for them to eat, to reproduce, to live.
Right.
So that's the biggest one. And that kind of is connected to urbanization. So as we develop cities, as we try to develop infrastructure to make life easier for humans, highways are going to present problems for animals, factories, suburbs, you name it.
Mhm.
And then if we just start tapping into particular areas too hard, so if we're over harvesting trees, if we're over harvesting certain species within an ecosystem that can cause an ecosystem to collapse. If we are after a mineral that's under the ground of a particular ecosystem, that's going to cause problems. And that goes hand in hand with mining and then also smelting.
Mm.
And then we've gotten a little bit better about this one, building dams. And so if we want to control water, if we want to create reservoirs, if we want to generate electricity, we're going to build dams. But that's going to present some significant issues for those organisms that live further down the river. So the Hoover Dam, for example, has basically decimated the Colorado River. So as the Colorado
Yeah.
River continues to flow and then becomes the Rio Grande, there's not much water left due to those dams. And that goes hand in hand with just diverting water as well. So not just damming it, but just moving it to different places. Fertilizers. I live on a lake, and a lot of my neighbors have removed all the vegetation along the shoreline and have these nice pristine green lawns. And then to keep those lawns green, they fertilize them. And all that fertilizer runs into the lake. And then it causes these huge, huge blooms of algae, which
Mm.
kill and choke out all the other fish. And this is the last one, climate change, which is self-explanatory. How are we doing on time? Oh, we're at the halfway point. Ooh la la. And I think I only get 45 minutes in this little presentation. So I might have to end the meeting and then restart it again.
Oh, okay.
Bum, bum, bum. There are two examples. Again, there are millions and millions and millions of examples of ecosystem loss. The easiest one is obviously the Brazilian rainforest. That's like a pretty common one to cite. Um, but these are two other potential examples. And again, if you want to look up what caused these examples, you totally can. But on a test, if you had one or two examples of your own, it's going to be really
Mhm.
beneficial to you. This is just over harvesting of timber.
Mm.
And this is the creation of a dam that rerouted the water. All right. How we doing? You doing okay so far?
Yes, doing good.
Okay. And it's what time is it now in Massachusetts? It's 9:30.
It's 11:31.
Oh, it's 11:30. That's right. You're an
Yeah.
hour later. Did you go straight back to Massachusetts at the end of the school year, or did you travel somewhere before you went home?
No, I went straight to Massachusetts.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome.
it's
Good for
nice.
you. All right. And so how do we know that we're in the middle of the sixth mass extinction? Well, there's lots and lots of evidence. There's lots and lots of research. And there's lots and lots of nonprofit organizations, NGOs, that are helping to establish that this is indeed a crisis. These are some of the governmental or intergovernmental agencies that track biodiversity loss. Um, the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, or IPBES, is the biggest one. Um, and as your notes asks, it's an intergovernmental body, so that means it isn't affiliated with the US, it's not affiliated with China, it's not affiliated with any one government, it works between the governments. All right. And what are some evidence that or how do they collect their evidence? The big one is monitoring. And so they're not necessarily um, doing any super intensive experiments. They're just doing observations. So they're tracking numbers and looking at how ecosystems are changing. So they're looking at the population size of species within those ecosystems, the range of species, the diversity of species. Again, the richness and the evenness, that's the big one. How big the ecosystem is, whether it's shrinking, and then how degraded the ecosystem is, how much damage has already been done. And then what levels of threat are each species under? Are they right on the brink of extinction? Are they endangered? Are they threatened? There's a whole list of different categories that we kind of take organisms through as they get closer to being extinct. All right. Oh, and last but not least, we do now that life's a little bit easier, we do monitor their genetic diversity as well.
Mm.
All right. Did you get all those?
Yes.
All right. Just let me know if I'm going too fast.
No, no worries.
All right. And like any good science, we want to collect this data constantly. We want to do it over and over and over and over again, so that we have the most accurate idea of what's happening. And so, oftentimes groups will go out multiple times a year. But even if they go out once a year, that's super, super helpful. So near my house, there's this huge bluff, and there's a migration of all these birds across the Great Lakes. And so
Hmm.
every spring, all sorts of bird enthusiasts come and they work with the DNR to basically count the evenness and richness and identify all these birds as they're flying over this bluff. And that's super, super helpful. And so if as you get older, if that's something that interests you, you can always volunteer and do go along with these expeditions, and they're pretty cool. Um, and like it says, you get contributions from experts, but more often than not, it's just citizens, it's just people. Well, it just said my free meeting will end in 10 minutes, so I'll have to stop it and restart it. All right.
Sure. There's-
Okay, so now we're going to do a little bit of math, but I promise this is not particularly tricky math. And as I said before, this is our friend, the Simpsons Diversity Index. And there's no relationship here to the television show. I'm sure an ecologist with the last name of Simpsons developed it. You probably are aware of all these math letters. This funky looking one is a sigma, and that's just
Yeah.
the sum. And then we use n, and n is usually a placeholder for an unidentified number. In this case, a capital N is going to be the total of organisms of all species. And that's probably not making any sense at all right now, but it will. And then the little n is the number of organisms of a single species. And so using all of this, we're going to be able to generate a value, and that value is represented by the letter D, and I think it stands for diversity. Um, Now, on its own, this D means nothing, doesn't mean anything. It's not super helpful. But if you look at a particular ecosystem, or if you look at a particular biome, or if you look at a particular area, and you have a number of Simpson's diversity index values over a number of months or years or decades, that's super helpful because it can help you better understand how's that ecosystem doing? Is it getting more biodiverse? But realistically, is it getting less biodiverse? All right. So usually one last thing, the greater the value of D, the more biodiversity there is. So we want high levels of diversity. All right, so let's try this. First, I'm going to challenge you. This is very, very tricky. But for sample A and sample B, can you just give me a count of species A, which we'll say are the butterflies, species B, which on the left we'll say is the dragonfly, and on the right, I don't know, is that an ant? And then uh, our friend on the left, the ladybug. So how many of each of those do we have?
Six species A,
Yep.
one species B, and then one species C.
Nice. You still got it. And so in
Okay.
total, 6 plus 1 is how much?
Eight.
8. Nailed it. Nailed it. And then on the right side, you've got
Four species A and then four species B.
all right, perfect. So what do you
Very
notice?
good.
The totals are the
Same.
same, right? And so if you just stop there, you'd say, oh man, both of these ecosystems, they seem to be doing okay. Like they have the same number of species. What's all the fuss about? But again, the lack of uh
Evenness.
yeah, evenness is going to be problematic because who is that dragonfly going to fall in love with, right? It's
Yeah.
forever alone. It's very sad.
Yeah.
Um, so we got our numbers right. And so now let's figure out like how do we plug this into the Simpsons diversity index equation? And we're going to try to do this before my time runs out. So we've got our total, right? Now
Mhm.
with our total, that 8, that's what's going on the top line. And so
Okay.
capital N refers to the total organisms of all species, which in this case is 8. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Perfect, perfect. And so 8 times 8 minus 1 is 8 times 7, which is
Oh, 54.
a little higher.
56.
56. Nailed it. Nailed it. That wasn't fair. I put you on the spot. 56. No problem. Now, here's where things get a little bit more difficult. So with the bottom line, you have to take all three species one at a time and then add them up, right? So
Mhm.
you're going to start with species A and you're going to do 6 times 6 minus 1. So 6 times 5,
Mhm.
which is going to be
So,
30.
yeah,
Okay. Then you're going to add that. You're going to add that to 1 times 1 minus 1, which is
one. Oh,
0.
0. One minus one. Yeah.
Yeah. And then C, 1 times 1 minus 1, which is 0 again. And so
Mhm.
you're really going to get 56 divided by 30 because 30 plus 0 is 30.
30. Yeah.
That making sense? I went through that really fast.
A little. Where did you? So how do you differentiate in the sample the total of all, like capital N and then little n?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question. So like this is totally new and it's math, which is gross. But if we look down here, maybe this provides a little bit more clarity. So on the top, can you see this down here?
Yeah.
Perfect. So on the top, I just
Oh, I see you broke it up. Oh, never mind.
yeah. So I
Okay,
just
I see
added
what's
six
going on.
plus 1 plus 1, right? Now give me
Right,
eight.
yeah.
And then 8 times 8 minus 1 is 56. So that's where
Yeah.
you get that from. And then the bottom here is just each individual one. But it's not super exciting, right? Because like there's only one. They don't have anybody to fall in love with. And so
Yeah.
you get 1 times 0 and 1 times 0. So it ends up just being like 30 plus 0 plus 0. So
Mhm.
56 divided by 30.
Okay, this makes more
Um,
sense.
yeah, and so that gives you 1.9, which again, like who cares? Like that's some math. That doesn't mean anything to me at all. Like there's no standard to compare it against.
Hmm.
Uh, but if I want to go, maybe this is on one side of a highway and then I look at the other side of the highway, that gives me some sort of context. Or if I come back to this site, maybe this is my front yard, and I come back the next summer and I do it again, that gives me some actual context. And that's where this
Right.
becomes helpful. And so if I'm seeing 1.9 the next season or on the other side of the highway drop, I'm going to be like, something funky is going on here. Maybe there's an issue with traffic. Maybe there's an issue with maybe a company moved in and they tore down a field or they plowed a field because they're putting in a parking lot or something. Um, all right, so try this one on your own. This one's a little bit easier, and then we'll talk about it.
Okay.
I'm gonna grab a Coke Zero. All right. So what'd you get for the top line?
8 times 8 minus 1.
Boom. And so that's the same as our last one. So it's 8 times 7, and that's going to give us 56. And then we're going to get a different number on the bottom, right? So we've got for species A, 4 times 4
That's
minus
4
1.
minus 1. And then the same for species B.
So that's going to be 12 plus 12. So that'll give us 24. So in this case, it should be 56 divided by 24. And so it looks like this area, wherever this happens to be, is more biodiverse
Hmm.
than the other area. So again, richness matters, man. Like it doesn't
Yeah.
matter how many species you have if there's just one or two of them.
Mhm.
There's nobody to fall in love with. You don't have enough genetic diversity, so you can't really sustain the population.
Right.
So there you go. All right. Um, how we doing? All right. Moving right along. So this is a bit redundant because I feel like we already talked a little bit about what's causing ecosystem loss and what's causing species loss, but um, this next bit, A4.2.26, just gets into more causes of biodiversity. And the biggest one
Hmm.
is just the human population and how much it's grown. I think, are we up to 8 billion? Something like that?
I think so.
Yikes.
That's a lot.
It's a lot of people. Um,
Hmm.
but in addition to that, in addition to those 8 billion people, we've got hunting. That's a big one still. I don't know, in kind of developed worlds or developed nations, how common hunting is, other than just recreational hunting. But there are still some places that depend on hunting as like the primary way of getting food. And so it's
Yeah.
easy to forget that not everybody has a Walmart, not everybody has a grocery store.
Right.
I'm gonna lose you here in a minute, so I'm gonna pause here, and then if you want to just rejoin, I'll restart the meeting.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm gonna end this bad boy.